Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to this educational webinar on charity fundraising strategy for holistic cancer care centers. So we are really delighted to welcome Adam Feder from Maggie. He will share with us his inspiring and his expertise in fundraising. So my name is Françoise Vamek. I will be your host today. I'm the co-founder of Oncia Community, a cancer foundation endorsed by IBA. So IBA is the world leader of particle accelerators technology for diagnosis and treatment in cancer. So before we start the webinar, let me give you a bit of background. So Oncia Community is committed to support people affected by cancer. At Oncia Community, we ensure that every patient, caregivers, and family benefit from comprehensive care with a human-centric approach across their entire cancer journey. So during and after the treatment, and this action is global. Because we are convinced that beyond technology and medical, progressive humanizing care is also very crucial in the fight against cancer. So not just treating the disease, as we do in the conventional medicine, but also integrating the care of the person in all the dimensions, meaning such as emotional, physical, social dimensions. So this is the role of holistic care centers to reply to the needs of all the patients, such as yoga, acupuncture, or social support, in order, to take care and to give this complementary care to people affected by cancer. So the objective of Oncia Community is to support the growth of this holistic cancer care worldwide in collaboration with oncology centers. And so now let's take a look at the agenda and what you can learn on this webinar today. So this webinar is part of a broad program in a broad program which tackles all these challenges involved in setting up and running holistic cancer care centers. And this fourth webinar is about fundraising strategy. So, as a matter of fact, fundraising is a critical component of the success and the sustainability of holistic care centers. So you have to know that most of holistic care centers are non-profit organizations. So effective fundraising strategies enable this non-profit organization to fulfill their mission, to support their communities, and to create a lasting impact to people affected by cancer. So let's introduce Adam. Adam Feder is head of corporate partnership at Maggie's. Maggie's is one of our main partners. So Maggie's is a huge network of holistic care centers with more than 30 centers in the UK and overseas. They raise about 30 million euro a year through various strategies. And so Adam has 15 years of expertise in fundraising, and he will explain all the tips and all the strategy to raise funds to support Maggie's. So, but before we get started, here are some practical details. So, the webinar is being recorded. A replay will be available. If you have any question during the presentation, please use the Q&A button, and please not use the chat button. So if you have any question, we'll be pleased to reply to your question after the presentation during the Q&A session. So thank you, Adam, for being with us today. I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Francois. Really happy to be working with Oncia, and very excited to share with you a little bit more about how we do fundraising at Maggie's, and hopefully provide you with some great tips and advice to get started. So just a quick introduction. As Francois said, I am our head of corporate partnerships. So I look after our fundraising from companies, but at Maggie's we fundraise in lots of different ways, and I'm looking forward to giving you more information about them. We'll also learn a little bit about how our international centres fundraise, and about how fundraising varies in different countries, and how we look after our donors, and also a little bit of advice on hiring new fundraisers. So I'm going to get started. I know a lot of you will already know a little bit about Maggie's, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this bit. But for anyone who is new to Maggie's, we provide free, practical, emotional, and psychological support for people with cancer and their family and their friends. And we've got 24 beautiful centres across the UK that people can walk into. And really, three of the most important things to know are that all of our support is free, that you can get support immediately, and that we support people not only with cancer, but also their family and friends. And of course, we're funded almost entirely by voluntary donations. So as Francois was saying, that's why fundraising is so important to us. You can see on this slide some of the core support that we offer in every centre. So information and advice about cancer, whether you've just been recently diagnosed, or you've got a family member, or any specific type of cancer. Financial support. We support, as well as individuals, we support families. We support groups of people with different types of cancer, because there's nothing more useful than speaking to people going through the same experience as you are. And we have lots of different workshops and psychological support on offer. And as you can see in these photos, our centres are all beautiful locations, full of light, and meant to be as much like a home as possible. So this is to give you a little bit of an idea of where our centres are. As mentioned, we've got most of our centres in the UK, right from the top of Scotland down to the south of England. But you can also see that we've got international centres in Tokyo, in Hong Kong, in Barcelona, and we're really excited that we've just had a new centre open up really recently in Groningen in the Netherlands. So in order to run this network, we have a very important fundraising model, which we have found to work for us really well over the last, nearly 30 years. So each new Maggie Centre is funded through this model. We start by establishing a fundraising campaign, normally to raise between 4 to 7 million. And that covers a wide range of things. So as you would expect, the capital build, which is the building and the garden and the landscape, and that is usually between 2 to 4 million. But sustainability and knowing that the centre is financially secure is really important to us. So we also look to raise enough money to run the centre for an additional 2 years. So from the moment the centre opens, even if we didn't raise any more money, we would still be able to run the centre for 2 years. We begin in each centre with one centre fundraiser who'll be responsible for fundraising in lots of different ways, which I'll be talking about in a few minutes. And then slowly we build up. So we've got some centres now that raise £1 million, and they'll have 3 or 4 centres, but they will have 3 or 4 fundraisers. But when a centre is new and isn't raising so much money, we just have the one fundraiser. And Maggie's centrally also has a fundraising team. So As Francois mentioned in the information about this webinar, Maggie's raises about £13 million a year, and there's about 90 people who are responsible for bringing in that income. That's people like me who work at our national offices, but also people, then our teams at our 24 centres across the UK. And this is where our donations come from. So a really big proportion of our fundraising, this is a £27 million from last year, is from the communities. So that is where we have our centres throughout the UK, and their small team of fundraisers try and mobilise the local community to get involved in events, to make regular donations, to maybe leave a legacy. They'll try and get companies involved too, and that is roughly half our income. And then about 25% is from charitable trusts and foundations where they give out funding if you meet particular criteria, but also from companies. We then have our biggest funder, who are the People's Postcode Lottery, who give us £3 million every year, and they were also a very big part of the new centre opening in the Netherlands recently. We've also raised money, this was last year, but from Facebook challenges, which was particularly after the pandemic. We found that when people were kind of not able to leave their homes very much during the coronavirus, that doing virtual challenges was very attractive. In truth, that has now dropped off. That isn't a big income stream for us now, but it goes to show how you need to quickly adapt to new forms of fundraising. And then we hold special events like dinners and balls, and also legacies, which is when people leave us money in their will, and then when they die, the money comes to us after their estate has been managed. So now I'm going to go into all of these in a little bit more detail. I thought I would start, when I'm talking about the different ways that Maggie's fundraise, talking about the campaign, which is when you have got a new centre being built, which I thought might be relevant to a lot of people maybe here today who are from a new organisation, maybe looking to mobilise their local community. So once we have got permission to build, and we know that we are going to be building a new centre, what we find really helpful for fundraising is to set up a committee. So a committee of wealthy and well-connected people, hopefully philanthropists, who not only are there to donate themselves, but their main role is to try and help us get connected to influential people in the local community so that they will go on to make a donation. So the committee will normally meet quarterly, and there'll be monthly meetings with them individually to help manage that process. And then probably just less than a year before a new centre opens, that's when we first bring in a full-time fundraiser, because you do need your fundraiser there before the centre opens, because building those relationships with your committee and on the ground are really important. And in terms of recruiting that committee, it tends to come from very senior links. So using your most senior, chief executive, directors, and supporters to get to those most influential people. In that first 6 to 12 months, you're not necessarily looking to ask them for money. You're more trying to build those networks. You're trying to get them into your centre if you've already got one, or to visit the site, what we call a hard hat tour when it's being constructed. And you come in your high-vis jacket, your boots, and all your safety equipment, and you get to see the centre being built. And that's really powerful, because then you feel a part of the process. We then would have one-to-one meetings, try and get the chief executive involved. And we'd be very clear we're looking to raise money, but not immediately asking for money. And a really big balance for us is you need to not ask for money too soon, but also not lose the opportunity, because sometimes people are insulted that you haven't asked. And that's a really tough thing. And speaking to my colleague who manages this side for Maggie's, that's the big difference between the UK and America. In the UK, if you ask too quickly, you might offend someone. In America, if you don't ask quickly enough, you will offend someone. So it's a different culture in every country. And the things to avoid with a campaign are setting too high and unrealistic a target that is too high that you won't be able to achieve, but also not having something so low that it's not inspiring. And how you treat each donor has to be completely different. So you need to understand the different way that each member of your committee and every supporter needs to be treated. But generally, we know they want to engage with the most senior people. So we are very lucky that our CEO, Dame Laura Lee, is very well known and has a good reputation. So people really want to meet with her, and you're using that as an opportunity to get support. We're also very lucky that we have the Queen as our president, and she opens all our centres. And it's these money can't buy opportunities that people like, whether it's meeting the Queen, getting a tour with Laura, if you've got an architect or a garden designer who you know, having an event with them, private drinks. So for these, when you're building a centre, you are looking for those ultra high gifts, because you need those £1 million or €1 million gifts to build the centre. So any sort of anything exclusive you can offer is really important. So now moving on to community. And when I talk about community fundraising, I mean getting individuals in your local community to support you. This is not really wealthy individuals. It's getting a big number of supporters to give you what we would call a mid-level gift. So across our 24 centres, we have teams in every centre, and the first things that they look to do, they need to raise about £7,000 a year to run their centre. So they also look at what other groups are in the local community who fundraise. In the UK, you have Rotary and community clubs who give to charity, schools, community organisations, local trusts, and also companies, which I will go into later. But the main thing that they do is everyone who comes through the door and is supported by Maggie's or by a cancer charity of any sort is your best possible ambassador. And they will often go on to become your first fundraisers. So you need to have places in fundraising events, whether that's runs, bike rides, abseils, skydives, to get the community involved. You also want to have what we would call our regular giving, where you get people signed up to give 10, 20, 50, 100, £200 every month. So it's small amounts, but if you can get a lot of them to give regular income, then that's absolutely fantastic. And really looking at what the local environment is like, because in every city, it's a little bit different, and you are definitely going to need a unique approach. And where you've got a space that amazing work is going on and people are being supported, for all your meetings, get them into the centre, get them into the place where support is being offered to meet the staff, because seeing is believing. So the way that I know that I'm going to have the best chance of getting support is when I invite people into a Maggie centre. So if we now move on to major donor, which also kind of means philanthropists as well, basically rich people, if I'm being very simple. We have a team who are dedicated to working with them. And I asked them, what do you need in place to begin to get money from philanthropists? And they said, you really need to be able to demonstrate impact. So major donors really want to solve problems. You need to make sure that there is a sense of jeopardy, that it is urgent, that it is needed, and that what you are doing is unique. So that is really key. And then the next thing is, how do you get to them? And that is all about what we call network mapping. So that means, who does your CEO and directors know? Who do your centre visitors know? Who do your contacts know? And really begin to map where you already have an introduction. Because what we call a cold approach, when you just go to a company that's completely new, has a very low success rate. But when you go in with a warm connection and you have been introduced by someone already, that is when you're going to have a much better chance. Moving now on to my area, so that my favorite area, because it's the one that I work in, is corporates. And by that, I mean getting companies to support our work. So I work on a small team of 3 people. who look to get relationships with companies. And we do this in a number of different ways. So firstly, we have what we call in the UK Charity of the Year. That is when a company decides to support a company and does fundraising events for them throughout the year. So in those situations, our job is to provide a calendar of brilliant events, volunteering opportunities, and with the right big company, our biggest corporate partnership will raise £500,000 over 2 years. And there are bigger ones out there too, but they are very hard to get. It's a very competitive process. And when you're starting out, you really have to use your resource carefully because there might only be one of you and you've only got limited time. So my advice would be, don't apply for something that you think is incredibly unlikely to come off. You might need to wait until you build your brand and you're better known in your country before you start winning those opportunities. Because at Maggie's, we probably only started to win these opportunities quite recently. The other thing to say is that we can use our expertise to get companies interested. So I look at energy companies because I know that they are obligated to support vulnerable customers. So in the UK, there are legal obligations to support people who need it if there is a power cut or a flood. So there is money that they have that they need to give to charities. So Maggie's, by being able to raise awareness of the support that is available from the energy company, we have got funding from these companies. So we get about £100,000 a year from that sort of partnership. And I think there's a lot more that we can do there. Another one is financial services. When you think about insurance companies and banks, they again are speaking to thousands of people every day, and they need to support their vulnerable customers. We know in the UK that 1 in 2 people will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. So they very much know they need to offer this support. And so I've been developing some work about how we can help make cancer-friendly insurance and cancer-friendly banking. And we've delivered workshops and webinars like this, all about how you communicate to customers with cancer, how you have difficult conversations, how you manage a conversation with someone if their loved one has died, for example. And we also support companies through our Cancer in the Workplace program to support their own employees with cancer too. So look at those sectors that have a natural reason to want to work with you. And then a couple of final things on corporate. Research other charities, which companies are giving money to them, because that partnership will come to an end and you then can pounce and you can get in contact with those companies and create a little calendar of when opportunities are coming up. So you know, in February and March, a new opportunity opens, but you need to start that conversation and building the relationship a few months before. And I would say always have a very small prospect list. Don't have 100 companies that you want to contact. Get your dream 10 and work very hard on connecting with them. And lastly, I find LinkedIn to be incredibly helpful in terms of making approaches, because people get thousands of emails every week, but they get less LinkedIn messages. And you can also be shorter, and you can also do some good detective work on LinkedIn to work out who is the exact person who you need to speak to. Moving on now to trusts and foundations, which is a big income stream for Maggie's. So we get very little money from statutory, but by that I mean government. Most of this money is from trusts that have been set up by families or companies that give money every year to charities. And you have to very carefully see whether you fit their criteria. What we find we need in place here is the research is very important. So in the UK, there are databases that you have to subscribe for and online directories where you can see when funding opportunities open. There is a lot of competition for these opportunities. So you really need to think about what makes your opportunity unique. And also there will be quite a low success rate. Not all your applications will be successful. So you definitely need to be resilient and tough and not be put off when you're unsuccessful, and ask for feedback and begin to learn lessons. A key thing for this type of fundraising and every type of fundraising really is before you get started, having what we call your case for support, which is why your charity, why what you do is unique, why it is urgent, and what impact you will have. And you want a few different propositions because different organizations will want to fund different things. So a bank will be more interested in financial health. So that means I know I need to talk more about that side of Maggie's work, whereas other organizations are more interested in the support that we offer psychologically. So you want a few different propositions, and you almost view them as packages that you can then offer to people. Storytelling is very important. We're very lucky here that we have got a fantastic stories team that gathers these stories of people who have been supported by Maggie's. If you go on our YouTube, you'll see these lovely 2 and 3 minute videos that show the impact that we have. And really, that is the only way that you can really bring your impact to life. Special event is another important thing to do, and that is having those gala dinners and gala balls where you do bring people together. People know on the night there's going to be a lot of fundraising, and that might be the culmination of a year of relationship building, and then you're inviting people to this event, and there will be asks in the room, there might be auctions, but then also there are then follow-ups and follow-up meetings where hopefully you can ask for funding also. And then another one is legacies, which is, as I mentioned, when people leave money in their will to charity. And that is obviously, it can be quite a sensitive subject for a cancer charity because you don't want to be giving people support at the same time as asking them for money when they die. But it is a really important thing. So we find that making all of our staff in the centres aware about legacies and giving them a little bit of training about how to talk about it. So if they're asked a question, they know a little bit about it. A lot of people will ask in the centre if they're being supported, how can I help? And then they have asked you the question, and then it's appropriate for you to ask. But it does take a very long time to benefit from legacy funding. So you need to keep going, keep having those conversations, and just don't be afraid. It seems like a taboo subject that you shouldn't talk about, but really, death, unfortunately, is something which we do need to normalise and be more comfortable talking about. So as long as we give people the training and the confidence in our centres to be able to talk about it, we are seeing this revenue grow. But just to give you an idea of how long it takes to get the money, it's 7 to 10 years on average. So if you begin now, it will be a long time until you get the money, which isn't such a bad thing because it means that people are living for longer. But don't expect to see the results straight away. But you will. It's an example of an effort now that will pay off in the long term. So before I move on, just to sum up what I think in general are the key things to always remember for fundraising, it's having that case for support and propositions about why your charity, why is it so urgent, why are we unique, using your networks then to get out to people and having those warm introductions, bringing people into your centre or your space to see the support being offered, and then continue to look after them, stay in touch, show them the impact of the support. Don't only get in touch to ask for more money. You need to show them what the donation has done. That might be inviting them back into the centre, a thank you letter from your chief executive, an invite to an event that isn't about fundraising, sharing a video from a centre of fundraisers saying thank you. But you can't just ask for more money. You really need to show the impact. So I'm just going to move on to I've had some lovely chats over the last week or two with our international centres, which are part of our network. So we offer them advice and help, but they are completely separate to how they are run. But the first one that you can see, the biggest picture is our beautiful centre, Calida, in Barcelona, which is, as you can see, absolutely beautiful. They have an interesting. I had a really interesting chat with one in Barcelona. So they get most of their income is split really between their founding trustees, who are the people who made the first donations, and they've managed to successfully keep them involved. But it's major philanthropists who deliver about a third of their fundraising. So that's where they're being successful. But they are now being more successful with getting people to give regular gifts, getting the community fundraising, and they're finding events are also going really well. So they raise about €700,000 a year to run the centre. As I mentioned, they're seeing an increase there in corporates that are giving and an increase in foundations. There is the World Giving Index, which I was looking at, and there's about 220 countries in the world ranked on how much they give. So Spain is at number 86, which might not seem that high, but Catalonia is actually more generous than mainland Spain, which I found really interesting. And the reason for that is that there was more of a history there of being involved in an NGO, and whereas the rest of the country, the mainland, not the mainland, sorry, but the rest of the country, with the 40 years of democracy, they're still building those institutions, and a lot of the charitable giving there is still linked to the church. But they're definitely seeing that the market is growing, the scope for fundraising is growing every year. The issue, unfortunately for them, is that the competition is growing because the number of charities is growing too. So as a small organization, they are struggling to make their voice heard. But they're finding that gala dinners are proving to be effective. Inviting people who they know maybe have access to more money themselves or big budget at a company, and they're definitely finding that to be very, very effective. And they're going to be focusing much more on their corporate and regular giving. So they seem very optimistic in Barcelona, which is good. So if I move on to Groningen, they very recently opened. They also look to raise about €700,000 a year. Much more established giving and charity culture. They're 28th in the World Giving Index. They were set up with most of the funding came from a major donor, just one major donor, and 3.4 million from a really influential couple. And that is almost a perfect model because at Maggie's, when we're looking to build a new centre for 5-7 million, you need just a few very big gifts. So they've done very well to do that. And also the significant funding from the People's Postcode Lottery. But I asked them, going forward, how are you looking to sustain that fundraising? They are looking at targeting more foundations for long-term funding, but also, like the other centres I chatted to, getting regular community gifts of a lower value. So they've got a 5-year programme of what we would call mid-level of €5,000 a year, and they're trying to get people to commit to that. And they find that their success is coming from the fact that in the Netherlands, the Maggie's model is so unique that it's what's missing. And when they get people into the centre to see the professionals that we work with, they're very impressed. So they said this phrase, which really stuck with me: every visitor is an ambassador, and tell every visitor who comes in how important funding is. Which I think, if you do that, you've got a very good chance of doing well, because the people who you support are your biggest resource in terms of the enthusiasm that they have. So moving on to Tokyo, which is completely different. So they have a smaller target of around 300,000, but the fundraising culture in Japan is much less established. So they are number 139 out of 142 on the World Giving Index. So in the bottom kind of 4 countries in Japan, there just hasn't been a big culture of giving. So they're definitely finding it hard. They are trying to focus on that very small level regular giving. So they've got 200 donors currently giving about £10 a month, but they've got a target of 1,000 members. and they're trying to build awareness through Facebook, through Instagram, they're finding that companies get in touch with them to ask for their expertise. So to do a lecture, to do a workshop, and they're definitely getting more success with companies, insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies particularly. And even though there's not a culture of giving, over there, apparently crowdfunding is much bigger. So it's looking at things in a different model. So they're looking at, how they could perhaps do, crowdfunding campaigns to raise money. And by crowdfunding, I mean when you've got an online campaign with a target and you ask for small donations online and you say, if we get to this amount, we can have this amount of incredible impact. So that's a little bit about our international centres. So I just wanted to move on to stewardship. And by stewardship, I mean how you look after your donors, the people who give you money. So definitely, even when you're starting out, the importance of having a database where you record the information. So in two ways, that's really important. You need to record the conversations you're having with donors and with companies so that you keep a track of how it is going. So if someone else needs to speak to them or you leave, there is some continuity and that conversation can still be picked up. You also need to track income very carefully because nothing gets a donor more cross than you not knowing how much money they have donated or two people making the same approach. You really need to kind of make sure you're very well organized and that you know exactly how much has been given, what it's funded, and that's the only way you can really let them know the impact. Definitely thanking them very quickly is really, really important. So firstly, letting them know as soon as you've received the money, and then maybe getting a more personal thank you from if it's a big gift from the chief executive or thinking about something more unique. With companies in particular, they're very interested in PR and marketing, social media. So it's thinking if you're going after a big company, what could you do together that could get some good public relations, get some good media coverage, which is, for example, at Maggie's, the kind of cancer-friendly insurance, cancer-friendly banking has worked very well. Staying in contact regularly with donors is also very important. So not only getting in touch to ask for money, but updating them. I've set up for our team quarterly webinars that are online that companies can dial into that will be different themes. One might be how you support people with grief in the workplace. One might be how you support employees. And they just come along, listen in, and there's no ask for money. It's us giving something back, giving a benefit to them. You do need to think quite carefully about, for the different amounts of money you're getting in, what can you offer? So what you offer for £100,000 is going to be very different to what you offer for £5,000. But you still need to think about what are they going to get, because that is the only way you can steward them and make sure that they go through the process that you want. So have a think about what you can offer at different levels. Definitely also always showing the impact in person and doing a really tailored approach. And before you ask for another donation, making sure that you've been in contact a lot about the impact. You haven't only been in touch to ask for money, but then it is appropriate to ask for money again. It's just doing it in the right way. So in terms of hiring a fundraiser, obviously that's going to depend quite a lot on whether you've just got one fundraiser. Because if you just are recruiting for your first fundraiser, you're going to need them to be a general fundraiser. They're going to have to do 4 or 5 different types of fundraising. You're not going to find someone who's an expert in each one, and that's fine. You don't really need to. There are a lot of very transferable skills. To be honest, fundraising is just about being confident speaking to people, liking building relationships, being good at writing. And in truth, it's very similar to sales, but your product is just a brilliant product. It's helping people, which is why we're all so excited about it. But it is really a type of sales. So if you can't find someone with a fundraising background, you could always think about someone who's looking to move over. My first charity job was for a tiny hospital charity in North London. I came from a sales background, and they knew when they hired me that I'd need a bit of mentoring. So I got an external mentor from a different organization, and that's a really useful thing to do. So the charity sector is very, very supportive. So I get people reaching out to me all the time saying, can we have a quick chat? I'm just starting out in fundraising, and normally I'll do it. I'll still reach out to people who are more senior than me if I want to chat, or people who are experts in different things. And so definitely, if you've got one fundraiser, it can be quite a lonely existence just being the one fundraiser and a lot of pressure. So encourage them to build that mentor, build their network, go to networking events. And then as you grow the team, then you can think about getting in specialist fundraisers. But I'd say that that's a bit further down the line when you've started raising a lot more money. And then return on investment. We always think anything that we do at Maggie's, we want a 3-to-1 return. So to get, at least 3 times more money than we spent on it. So whether that's a fundraiser's salary or an event, it's just a good way of thinking, having a minimum amount, so what you're looking to get out of it financially. I think I'm getting to the end now. I know we want to leave time for questions, didn't we? So now, Francois, did we want to open up for some questions?
Yes, so thank you, Adam, for your clear explanation and sharing your huge expertise in fundraising. So it helps us to better understand how to secure financially holistic cancer care centers. So regarding the question, let's move to the Q&A session. So we receive some questions. The first one is we will start with the general questions. Can we have access to the rating of the countries in terms of donation culture?
Yeah.
You mentioned during the
yes, of course. The World Giving Index. I will share that so it can be shared. No problem at all.
The second question we have is regarding the different types of fundraising. So the first one is, how to get various sources of funds. If you are facing difficulties to find funds in your country, how can you get international funds?
Mm-hmm. It is possible, but I would say it's quite difficult. You do get companies and trusts and foundations that look to fund key areas that are important to them. So it might be finding a business that is headquartered in a different company, but has operations in your country too. And then they would probably fund your country. And often you can find, by doing a little bit of research with foundations and companies, where they funded. So that gives you a really good idea. But I would say it is hard to get something funded in a different country outside of those two areas. So I think with philanthropists, they might have an interest in other areas, but often they want to fund their local community.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other question is, which corporate sectors have been the most fruitful for funding partnership with Maggie's?
Yeah, definitely financial services. So insurance and banking. I think for the reasons that I was speaking about, where there is so much that they can learn because so many of their customers are going to get cancer. They're going to need to support them through that if they can't pay their mortgage or it's health insurance and they need to speak to their insurer. And they can then talk about the work they're doing to support people with cancer. I think similarly, energy companies too. I think energy is a big area because again, people are vulnerable. People with cancer need to heat their homes more. They might, in an emergency, they need support first. So those are the two, with one addition of pharmaceutical for the obvious reason that they sell cancer drugs, which I know is a cynical way of looking at it, but because of that, they have such strict rules that they have to give funding in what we call no strings, with no obligations, no branding. So as long as it's done the right way, that can be really effective. And sometimes you can just go in cold with an approach, because you look at the website, you can see exactly how much money they give away each year, because they have to say exactly how much money they give away. And that is the easiest one to just do quick applications to.
Yeah, okay. One question regarding operating expenses. How do you manage fluctuation in donations and ensure the financial stability of the center?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. I think the first way is, like I said, when the center first opens, we make sure they have 2 years worth of running costs. But then the second safeguard is our reserves. So in the UK, it's recommended that you have at least 6 months of reserves. So that is money that you have completely keep to the side, and that if you raise no more money for your charity, you can still run it for 6 months. So it's definitely keeping a very careful eye on reserves, and just generally being very careful about money. I talked about the return on investment of 3 to 1. Really being strict about only investing in things that are going to bring in a return, because that's the most important thing, is our financial stability, so we can still be there to support people.
So you mentioned that for the creation, you did 4 to 7 million pounds target funds to raise for new centers, but you also talk about a capital of 2 to 4 million. So could you clarify?
So it depends so much on what the centre is. So sometimes we have interim centres where maybe we are taking over an existing building, or we've already got a building, and then the cost is the lower end. Or if we're building something completely new, then it's getting to the top end. And also, we've noticed that construction prices, the prices of materials, for reasons like the pandemic, like the war in Ukraine, have meant that projects are going even higher. But then on top of that, even if it costs 4 million, by the time you then have 2 years running costs, and think about other things, you're getting closer towards that 7 million. But to be honest, the range is so wide, it is a bit hard to give an exact figure.
Regarding donors, what are the best practices for thanking and recognizing donors to ensure that their loyalty? So
yeah, I think that no, absolutely. I think definitely, firstly, speed of being quick to thank them, making sure the thank you is coming from the right person in the right way. So, do they need, if it's a very big gift, they need that to be senior. It might be a letter from your chief executive, but it might also be, an invite to start inviting them to your events, sharing nice opportunities with them, and really bringing to life the impact of their support. I think showing you have given £10,000, that has meant we could provide 400 sessions to people with cancer. Share a story of someone you've supported. I suppose it's being timely and quick, but also making sure that it comes from the right person and that you show the impact, probably would be the three things.
Okay. Next is regarding hiring fundraisers. So could you tell us what are the 3 key skills you look when you are fundraisers?
Yeah, I think for me, when I'm interviewing, it's how engaging and likable are they? Because they're going to have to build relationships with people. So do they seem comfortable? Do they seem to be enjoying speaking to people? Because relationship building is really, really key. I think I'd also want to know that they can, because we write a lot of proposals, that they can, they're comfortable putting together a proposal, and just that they really care, and that they're passionate. And probably you do get knocked back a lot in fundraising, you get rejected a lot. So you also need to be quite resilient and not be put off by that. But I do think a lot of the key traits are very transferable from other things, like sales, like recruitment, but business development, because it's all about relationships. To a certain extent, donors buy the charity, but they also need to buy into the person as a representative of the charity. So it is really, really important, those relationship skills.
And so are you looking for people having a huge network, or is it?
No, Their network, I don't mind about. It's more that they've got the skills to build, a network, and that I could send them to meet someone new, and they're going to be confident to meet them.
So regarding organizing a major donor committee, so how do you run such meetings? Which thematic is the fundraiser animating the meetings? So could you explain?
Yeah, I think so. In the first instance, you're getting your senior team and your CEO to kind of help with the recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
They almost need to kind of charm the person into wanting to be involved by meeting them one-on-one and showing why they're needed. But then it would be the fundraiser. The fundraiser would try and build up a relationship one-on-one. So they would meet each member of the committee, normally once a month, but then also get them together every quarter. And I think, it would have a kind of a different theme, but trying to at each stage of the campaign, you're going to be at a different part of the build. You're going to have different events that you're building to. You need that timetable over the 12 months to be driving to, at the end of the year, being able to make the financial ask. But it is led a lot by the fundraiser.
A general question: what are the most common mistakes charities make in fundraising, and how can they be avoided?
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. I think that there are a few. I think, especially when you're a small team of 1, 2, or 3 people, it's applying for the wrong type of opportunity. So you've got limited time. You've got 40 hours in a week. And if you are spending 10 of them on an application that you're very unlikely to get with a big company for £5 million that all the big charities with big brands are going for, it's a bit of a waste of time. You're not going to win. I think not doing enough mapping of networks, not using your senior team enough. I think I can't overestimate the importance of the fact that you probably already have connections through other people that you don't even know about because you've not had a chance to map them right. And then I think the other thing is maybe getting started before you're really ready, in terms of making sure you've got all the information you need of exactly why it's your charity, the impact they'll have, what's unique about it. So make sure you've got the base. And don't be afraid to ask someone to help developing that base. A really nice thing for company is to be approached by a fundraiser to say, I want a bit of advice. I've got this idea for getting funding from companies. Can you help me? And I do that a lot. They'll help you, and then they might also end up actually giving you some money. Don't be afraid to ask for advice. Awesome.
So you have to develop your value proposition, function of the sector you target. And,
absolutely.
And so are you developing several packages?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, always developing new ones. So, we know what our core package is because we have the different support we offer, specialist cancer support, psychology, financial support, but then stuff like the cancer-friendly banking, cancer-friendly insurance. I did a corporate kind of emergency appeal last year, new things that you are creating. That was on the cost of living crisis because everyone was hearing about the cost of everything going up. Inflation was up here. So it's also kind of seeing opportunity and going after it.
So one additional question is more international. Could you recommend how to get funds for supporting cancer patients in Iraq, Kurdistan?
I don't know that much, I have to say, about
developing countries, I would say.
Yeah, to be honest, it's not an area I've got a lot of expertise in, but what I'm very happy to do is to ask if anyone within Maggie's does have that expertise. I'm sure we can point you in the direction of some useful resources, but I have to be honest, it's not something that I know a great deal about, so I'm sorry about that.
Another question. So what's when is the location where Maggie Center is established is triggered by the collaboration you could have with hospital or with the number of patients, or also the number of the donors and the financing capabilities of the area?
More the first bit. So we all get invited in by the NHS. We kind of go where the opportunity is because we want to be at every cancer specialist site. That's not always going to be an area that it's easy to fundraise in. Like we're about to open a centre in North Wales. It's not an area that is, particularly prosperous. It just means we have to be a little bit more creative. One of the things that we're doing at the moment, because we have an ambition to open, 10 new centres in the next 5 years, is a national campaign that is looking to raise 30 million to open 5 new centres. So sometimes you can then box it together. So you bring it as part of a national campaign and you get people from other areas of the country supporting. But we go where the opportunity to be is because we want to be everywhere. And sometimes it's the most disadvantaged and poorer areas that need us most. So we want to be there most. But that's not always where the money is. So we have to think about it a bit more creatively.
Mm-hmm. So we know that you are putting Maggie's in close collaboration with leading hospitals in the UK and overseas. But sometimes do you have some donors who contact you in order to see if there is a possibility to, to build the Maggie's in the area to support the regions?
That has happened. I think it happened in India a few years ago. It wasn't a full Maggie centre that opened, but very much Maggie's inspired, the kind of holistic model of support that you were talking about earlier. So yes, absolutely. And that is always exciting for us when, people in new countries get in touch because and that's one of the things we love about our partnership with Oncia is it's all about spreading our expertise across the world and get, as many people to benefit from it as possible.
Okay, so we have to close this session. So if you have any other questions, do not hesitate to contact Adam or myself. We'll be very pleased to make the follow-up. So thank you for your attention. Thank you once again, Adam, for your clear explanation and sharing with us all your expertise. I hope that this webinar has been useful for you. So the next webinar will be is planned in October. And in the meantime, we encourage you to follow the Maggie's social media, so on LinkedIn or Facebook and the Oncia community website or LinkedIn in order to have an update on their outstanding work and achievements. So thank you very much for your attention and see you at the next webinar on October. Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye.